The king's gambit begins with the moves e4, e5, followed by f4. This opening is considered a bit risky because it exposes the white king early in the game. However, if played correctly, it can put the opponent in a much more precarious position. After black captures f4, white plays knight f3 to control key squares and prevent black from giving a check on h4. Black typically responds with the pawn g5, aiming to solidify their extra pawn and counter white's aggressive intentions. This move sends a clear message. Black is determined to hold onto the extra pawn and is preparing to push g4, driving away white's knight. Afterward, black plans to deliver a dangerous check with the queen on h4. This aggressive setup has discouraged many players from using the king's gambit altogether. However, white does have effective ways to counter this. One of my favorite responses is the move knight c3. At first glance, it seems like a standard developing move, but it actually sets up a cunning trap that can catch an unsuspecting opponent off guard. Black responds confidently with g4, attacking the knight. As the knight retreats, black plays queen h4, bringing the queen into play and threatening the king. At first glance, it seems like white is in serious trouble. Moving the king forward is clearly undesirable, as it would leave it exposed and restrict the development of white's other pieces. Playing king e2 would also trap the king in a vulnerable position. Meanwhile, g3 seems equally problematic because after black capture g3, white cannot recapture without losing the rook. If white avoids recapturing, black can still create significant threats on the following move. It looks like white is on the verge of defeat, but then comes queen capture g4. Counter-attacking black's queen. If black decides to trade queens on g4, white reaches an endgame with a lead in development and a playable position. However, black has a seemingly stronger response, g2, a discovered check on the king. This temporarily sacrifices the queen, but black will soon regain it while also capturing the rook on h1, gaining a decisive material advantage. In this variation, it may seem like black has outsmarted white, gaining a rook and a winning position. However, there's a major flaw. After queen h5, black has no effective defense for the f7 pawn. This means white ultimately wins, even while being a rook down. Black's previous moves feel logical and powerful, which makes this trap especially effective. If black tries knight h6 to defend, it doesn't change the outcome significantly. White can respond with d4, preparing to capture the knight. Once the knight is taken, white follows up with queen capture f7, supported by the knight on e5, delivering a crushing blow to black's position. Thus, knight h6 doesn't solve black's problems. In this game, black instead played a seemingly safer move, bishop e7, creating an escape square for the king. If white takes on f7, immediately with queen capture f7, the king escapes and black retains the advantage thanks to the extra rook. However, instead of queen capture f7, white plays knight capture f7. Maintaining the attack, black responded with knight f6, intending to drive away white's queen and then capture the knight, seemingly securing a win. But white unleashes a brilliant move with knight d6, a discovered and double check. This forces the king to move, as it cannot stay in place or escape to safety. Importantly, the king cannot move to e7 because queen f7 delivers checkmate. In the game, black played king d8, possibly aiming for a perpetual check after knight capture f7. However, white suddenly delivered queen e8, a brilliant and self-sacrificial move by the queen. This heroic sacrifice paved the way for knight f7, leaving white in a winning position. It's an absolutely brutal variation, demonstrating how powerful such tactical ideas can be when executed perfectly. Here, black goes for the main line with exd4. After white plays knight f3, black responds with g5, and white develops with bishop c4. This is actually an old line, yet it remains a deadly opening weapon. What's truly remarkable here is white's calm and composed play, no matter what black does. For example, when black pushes g4 to attack the knight, white simply castles, willingly giving up the knight. After black captures it, white continues confidently with knight c3, calmly developing as if nothing has happened. This illustrates white's readiness to sacrifice material for long-term positional and tactical advantages. Go for it. The most common move by black here is g2, which looks incredibly strong. Why not grab a seemingly free pawn? However, this is actually a losing mistake, though it's difficult for black to realize. Instead of recapturing immediately or playing rook f4, white has a much more powerful idea: bishop capture f7. At this point, white is significantly ahead in development, while black remains completely underdeveloped. This allows white to launch a decisive attack before black can organize their defense. The move bishop f7 draws the king out. creating vulnerability. Afterward, white plays rook f4, not just recapturing the pawn but combining it with a deadly attacking plan, setting up a swift checkmate threat. If the black king tries to escape, white can easily bring out the queen, and it's checkmate on the next move, an elegant linear checkmate. The king has very few options to evade. Now, returning to the position, it's more natural for black to play knight f6, but it doesn't help much due to e5. With this move, the knight is pinned, and even if black tries to move it, white can still capture it, leaving black in a losing position. Instead of capturing the knight immediately, white opts for an even stronger move, queen h5. This check utilizes the pin, preventing the knight from moving. As a result, the black king is forced to retreat to f8. White then captures the knight on f6. If black recaptures, it's a deadly position. White can play something like knight d5, threatening to win the bishop, and black's position falls apart. In an attempt to buy time, black plays bishop d6, hoping to gain a tempo for defense. But it's too late. That didn't help, so white responds with queen h6. Black's king moves to e8, and then white pushes f7, forcing the king to e7. From there, white delivers a beautiful checkmate with knight d5. It's impressive how white remains completely unshaken throughout the game. No matter what black does, whether it's taking the knight or trying to destroy white's castling, white stays calm and simply continues with the plan. In the end, this leads to a sudden and unavoidable checkmate. Often, opponents will choose to play the king's gambit declined if they aren't comfortable with the sharp and complicated main lines. Black may opt to defend the pawn with moves like d6 or knight c6. In fact, knight c6 is the second most popular move in this position. White then plays knight f3, renewing the threat to the pawn. If black defends, white continues with bishop c4, maintaining pressure on the position. You can clearly see how badly things go for black after knight f6 and d3. Many European players, the majority of them, will play bishop g4, which initially seems advantageous for black. However, it actually backfires. Let's see how it unfolds. White castles, black plays bishop e7, and white responds with knight c3, all standard moves so far. By the way, the bishop on g4 is never a problem for white because you can always play h3, forcing the exchange, which works in white's favor. Black often responds with knight d4, attempting to take advantage of the pin and start an attack, but this plan fails. After pawn capture e5 and black recapture e5, white has a beautiful combination beginning with bishop capture f7. It's not even a true sacrifice because after king f7, white can play knight e5, delivering a check to the king while simultaneously forking the bishop. This forces black's king to move, and white knight captures the bishop on g4, exposing black's king completely. Now, black typically plays knight g4, hoping to regain the pawn with knight c2, and indeed, they do get the pawn back. However, this opens the door for queen e6, delivering checkmate. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the game and found the analysis useful. If you did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more chess content. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.